and he grabs me from behind and holds me down, squeezing my arms and my elbows into my rib cage. He's upset. My oldest child, that I had to admit him to a mental hospital last week. He only pays me $300 every 2 weeks. He's a programmer. He makes almost 100,000 a year. I managed to get a temporary order of protection granted. I filed for it myself because I was trying my best to protect myself and my kids.
Got darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. You're
So
in
nice.
a war right now.
Uh-huh.
We've done a lot of calls on this channel, and this one is by far the most shocking and the worst one that we've ever done. We're going to talk to a woman who is a victim of unbelievable tragedy. This is a more serious call than what we're used to on the channel, but we are going to make sure that her story is told and she gets some help. Thank you for watching. Princess Leia, you're having some family problems, I think is a way we could, or issues at home. So let's talk about it.
In a nutshell, and I suppose they are ongoing, but definitely were more pressing when they were happening.
What issue do you want to start with?
I suppose the beginning of all of this was a call I made to my local police department.
Okay.
I actually live not far from Dallas, not too far.
Okay.
But it was a call I made to my local police department regarding an incident of domestic violence
I'm sorry to hear that.
with my
What
husband.
happened?
Essentially, I had picked up something that he didn't want me to have, and I walked away. Well, he tried to keep me from taking it, basically trying to keep me from having something that I already had in my hands, which is just as ludicrous as that sounds. But so eventually he lets go of it, and I walk away into a different room where I sit down and kind of start to look at it and poke at it at this thing. Well, I sat down in a different room, and he of course follows me. He sits down across from me, tries to take it from me, and I was prepared for it because I know how he is.
Sure.
So he didn't get it from me, and out of frustration, I stand up and I turn around and I walk away. I get a couple of feet outside of the house, and he grabs me from behind and holds me down, squeezing my arms and my elbows and into my rib cage, um, as he's trying to force me to give him this thing.
I'm
And
sorry
I've been
to.
dealing with this
Yeah.
stuff for, it's, let's see, the 21st would be 15 years.
I'm sorry that you're going through that. There's a lot of guys out there that'll be like, well, I didn't hit her. But grabbing someone or pushing someone or holding someone down, that's all assault. It's wrong. You're a victim. I'm sorry that that happened. What is it that you were holding that he was trying to get? Was it like a gun?
No, it was paperwork, actually.
Okay. What kind of paperwork? Why did he care about it so much?
It was divorce paperwork that I
Okay.
had picked up a couple of days before, and he didn't want me to fill it out while he wasn't standing over me and telling me what's right.
Sounds very controlling,
Yeah.
very, very abusive. Okay. Well, again, we're sorry that you're going through this or that you went through it. So you called the police and tell them what you just told us, basically?
Yes, so I suppose a bit misguidedly called the non-emergency line because I mean there was no fire. No one was really hurt. It wasn't an emergency. I didn't want to take up space on 911 for something that wasn't dire. So I called the non-emergency line and I spoke to an officer who proceeded to tell me, he said, let's see, one of the first things he said is I need to expect him to be upset because we're in the middle of a divorce, which wasn't true. I just picked up the papers a couple of days ago, but I suppose that's irrelevant. He said that he had been divorced several times and this is how it goes. Well, I wonder why. And then he continued with this statement. It's not like he spun you around and slapped you in the face
Wow.
before he refused to send someone out.
Wow. So did you eventually file that divorce paperwork, or are you currently married to him?
I filed it, I want to say a couple of days after this. There are some other things that were going on at the same time that kind of made it necessary for the process to be a little bit expedited.
Sure. Do you want to talk?
Um,
You want to tell us what that was?
sure. Well, my therapist had called Child Protective Services over domestic violence. I was finally able to open up to her and tell her about these things. And I mean, I suppose to add some context, I watched my mom have her rear end handed to her regularly as a kid.
Okay.
So I thought anything less wasn't abusive.
Yeah. Even the way
I
you
watched her,
described when you
yeah.
described calling the non-emergency line, you said I didn't want to take up space, and
Right.
it's like it's crazy, not only how good of a person you are because you're thinking of others, but how little you're thinking of yourself. Like
Yeah.
you're not really giving yourself space, and you need help too. But I think even just us talking today, we're kind of initiating that.
Sure.
So your therapist recommends calling CPS. How many kids do you have?
She didn't recommend it. She did it for me,
She's self-reported. Okay.
which exacerbated the situation, honestly. And though I appreciate it very much, the children hadn't been involved as I managed over the years to avoid talking to him until the end of the day after the children were in bed,
Yeah.
so that these things wouldn't happen in front of them. And that was the primary concern there. But we have four boys.
I'm sorry that you're going through this. So, you got a couple different things going on here legally. What would you like us to kind of analyze for you or talk through?
I suppose I was hoping to ask about from that day, and I think I've got stuff on my side handled. I'm kind of, going through the divorce process. That stuff isn't too bad. Well, isn't yeah, it's a divorce. So since the initial report, I made it the next morning because of course Yahoo wouldn't send anyone out. Since then, I've been talking in communication with a detective at the local station where I've told him about other things and this. I don't know if it's federally, but I know that at least in Texas, I have up to 2 years to report things that have happened. And so I had been talking to him about some of that, but the detective has done nothing but gaslight me through the entire process. He says things like, "Oh, I'll look into this," or "I'll talk to the DA," or "I'll do this," or "I'll do that." And all the while, he never sent any of this to the DA. He gave my soon-to-be ex-husband a gift, which wasn't of much value.
I'm
It was
sorry.
a
Wait, wait,
penny.
wait. Hold on now.
Uh-huh.
The detective that you've been talking
Mm-hmm.
to
Yes.
and explaining your situation gave a gift to your abuser.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of speechless. What was the gift?
It was a penny with a cross punched out of it because, of course,
Wow.
it's
This
not worth anything, but he keeps them on his lanyard in a little lanyard pouch for his ID badge at the station. But they both told me about it. They both used it as, I don't know, some kind of talking point.
So sometimes the
My husband,
show,
yeah,
sometimes the show is funny. I don't think anything about this call is funny. So
sure.
I would invite the two comedians to join the conversation as
Hmm.
ladies, right? So as women, not as comics. Like you're hearing this story, how are you reacting to it?
Obviously, I mean, it's never good to be in domestic violence. For
Sure.
is you mentioned you guys been together for 15 years, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then have 4 kids.
Yeah.
So that is really long abusive relationship. Like, yeah. So I feel like, do you think he kind of manipulated you to stay in the relationship for that long?
I think it was multifaceted. So I was in an abusive relation or abusive. I had an abusive. I had abusive parents. I had to watch my mom go through that. I was sexually abused by my father for years as a kid. My stepmom used to beat me with whatever she could get her hands on. So to come out of that, and I met him when I was 17
Yeah.
and he was 20. So it was already kind of creepy. It was out of the frying pan and into the fire. I
You
wasn't,
I'm
yeah.
sure your therapist already told you this, but you set the bar for what normalcy is
Mhm.
so
It's on the
crazy.
floor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the basement. It's in the sub
Mhm.
basement. Like I had my own interesting childhood, and it took a lot of therapy and it took a lot of
Sure.
time to be like, oh, people can be abusive without hitting you. Oh,
Right.
there's these other things that are abuse. Like, oh, words can be abuse. Like that was the thing. I was like 25, 26
Mhm.
before I even like understood that. Like it's like, well, no. I wasn't hit, so I wasn't abused. It's like, no, this is
Mhm.
psychological. This is a person that you trust. So I'm really proud of you, caller, for the steps that you're taking, how you're standing up for yourself. It sounds like you're doing all the right things. Like You have your therapist. There's one thing that's making me angry though on this call that like I just like
Hmm.
like actually physically. Like, so not only is the detective not taking you seriously, and this is a person that's supposed to be impartial, but he has
Hmm.
some type of relationship with your ex, and you know there's a thing the lawyers we have to deal with all the time, and it's called a conflict of interest.
Hmm.
Give a basic
Sure.
explanation of what you would do as a lawyer if you thought you had a conflict of interest on a case.
Yeah. First of all, Leah, I was actually speechless for a moment there when you described the coin thing. But I'm just genuinely so sorry that you're going through this. And as Josh said, it sounds like you've got the right pillars in place to get through it. But what has happened here is an absolute abomination from what you've described.
Right.
Yes, police officers are supposed to be impartial in a criminal investigation. They are not supposed to demonstrate any kind of bias like this. It sounds like this is kind of like an ex-husband's support coin, or
Hmm.
something dreadful like that. I mean, did they know
I
each
thought
other at
about
all?
race too. Like the cross is sometimes used as a symbol of like white pride and like Aryan pride and stuff.
Right.
Like I don't know if
There's
it's definitely
Um,
that,
yeah, I
but
wonder what that means. The penny with a cross.
I mean, I assume it's some kind of Christian iconography of hey, we're divorced men, divorced unpleasant men together or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But do you have any reason to think they knew each other before
They
the
did
divorce?
not, and
Huh.
I
I mean,
know
that
this for
makes it
certain.
worse, doesn't it?
Hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah.
Um,
There's more, actually. Not only did he spent, still does. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago and he told me that he was going to put a warrant. Oh, let me get to that first. So, I managed to get an order of temporary order of protection granted. I filed for it myself because, uh, nobody else was doing anything about anything. So I was trying my best to protect myself and my kids, especially since around this time was when he starts ramping up the parental alienation stuff, which has gotten exponentially worse, but that's a whole other story for another day. He, within hours of finding out that I was home from my mother's house, my husband was at my door. So this was 3 days after the protection order of protection was served, and he was told to leave the house. I called the cops. They told me they couldn't find him, but that there should be a warrant put out for his arrest. So I waited around, and there was never anything, nothing ever happened. And I called the detective, and he told me that it was my job to take evidence to the judge myself.
no.
Absolutely not.
No,
Wow.
because of this, the full order of protection was dismissed
Okay.
because he had a lawyer and I did not. And for whatever reason, they found it poignant to point out what my father did to me in court. I had a panic attack and could not properly get words together enough to explain why I needed it.
Wow.
It was dropped basically on a technicality. The judge basically said, because I followed him that day, which was the only day I've ever followed him in any of these, but it was because he picked up two of my kids and took them away from me and out of the room. So I followed him. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't running. I wasn't doing anything. I just followed him. He said, because you followed him, he has a reasonable expectation of privacy. So I shouldn't have followed him. Because I followed him is why he dismissed the order of protection.
Okay. Wow.
And then, yeah,
We've got a
if
lot.
it, yeah,
We got a lot going on here. I don't want to. Nina, do you have any thoughts or any interactions with this before I do a long diatribe? You don't have to, but I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. Okay.
no, it's okay.
Cool. Okay. So first off, this is kind of a broader conversation. Actually, first off, I want to talk about you. It is the
sure.
more you talk, the more I'm convinced that you're a victim here in multiple ways, not just from the actions of your ex-husband, but also there's kind of been a failure of the courts and a failure of the police department that you trust to protect you. And I'll talk broadly for a little bit, and then I'll kind of get specific. So domestic violence cases are very, very hard. They're hard all the way around. They're hard emotionally, but also
Sure.
they're very hard on cops. A lot of cops are great cops. Not all of them. There's some bad apples in there too. But I have family members that have been cops and are retired now. And with domestic abuse specifically, you get calls and then you go out there and then there's this big fight and it's really emotional. And then the victim doesn't want to press charges. It happens a lot. They get back together, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of frustration sometimes from cops who they want to get emotionally involved. They want to treat the guy like a piece of shit. They want to white knight and save the girl. But then 5 days later, they're back together. And the cop, you do that as your 9-to-5 job, and you risk your life doing it sometimes. And you're like, what am I doing this for? So there's people that become bitter and they lose sight of it. And that doesn't sound like your situation at all. I'm just saying there are people that don't take these cases as seriously as they should be, and they dismiss them. And there's people, like you even said, he was saying it's not like he hit you. He just moved you around a little bit. That's dismissing violence, right? And another thing is, like, at what point are these women allowed to stand up for themselves, right? Because when you have a person that pushes boundaries, well, the day I guess he comes after you with an axe, that's the day that you call 911. Well, you can't let it escalate. You can't wait for that to happen. So I want to say that. So I think we have two different situations here. We have what you need to do to pursue protective orders and actions against your ex. And then there's, did the police department, did the courts fail you to such an extent that you have a potential constitutional rights issue, you have a case against them? And I'll talk about it a little bit. And I will also admit that we've done some research here for your call, but also it's a little outside of my depth and yours as well.
Likewise.
But also probably us looking at it is, we're going to be able to see things that a person who isn't an attorney isn't, and then we're going to try to get you help from someone who's a specialist in it. So let's talk about the constitutional protections. So there's federal law, section 1983, that actually protects your rights from abuses of power or failures to act for law enforcement. So what you see is there's a bunch of cases all throughout the country where, and let me step back a second. Most police officers have immunity, something called qualified immunity. And that means even if they mess up, good luck. Tough shit.
Right.
So you have to have a way to bring a civil rights lawsuit that overcomes immunity. And there's very narrow ways to do that. So one of the good things is there are a lot of people that are able to do this and they win. One of the difficult things in doing the research for this is they usually settle. So the cases that win don't actually go to court and then get published, because when someone has a winning case, the city or the police department goes, oh, we don't want to lose $100 million. Let's settle for $3 million. And that final record, that ending of that story is not out there. So we went through and I looked at 20 plus myself last night and this morning, and there is a clear precedent of people where the police did not take their complaints, the police did not help enforce protective orders, and there's even multiple examples in Texas. So I want to caution you that fortunately / unfortunately, right, you didn't lose an arm. He didn't cut one of your arms off.
Right.
You don't have, he didn't throw battery acid on your face. You don't have the type of damages that would potentially trigger a real big win here. But I still think it's worth having a conversation with an attorney that specializes in this, because the thing that really jumps out to me is this cross penny and this relationship where the guy is literally obstructing. And to me, that is your best avenue, is looking at the detective. I did a little bit of Google searching while we were talking, and it looks like it's religious. Does your ex go to church, or does he belong to a men's group or something?
Now he does.
What kind of church is it?
It's the same church that was speaking on opening up a shooting range in their basement not too long ago. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
Gross, if you ask me, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that for your ex-husband to be in the same church as the detective is something the detective would need to recuse himself for, especially if he's continuing. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if that's the case.
I personally would be uncomfortable.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
With it. Yeah.
I don't know if he is or not.
Do you have anything open and active in terms of the protective order or anything else? What is the relationship with your ex right now like? Are you sharing custody?
I have to share custody currently.
How does that work?
Even though one of our children died in his custody back in 2020 because he wasn't watching him. He left him in the bath.
How is the detective letting how is he able to even be around the children?
I have no idea.
Oh god.
The only reason that we retained custody is because I was with the kids, because I worked from home, because I was there, they were safe. In fact, I presented this to a judge for temporary orders on the 31st of July and told him these same things, and it made a minimal difference.
So you had a fifth child.
Yeah, there was a baby that I lost back in 2013 because he pushed me off the bed,
Honey,
causing him to, yeah. It's so,
have you had
I
a lawyer? How did you file the divorce?
I filed it myself because in all of this, after I served the order of protection and whatever else, I have been the only one to support the children. Of course, the judge wrote the amount that he makes down wrong, so he only pays me $300 every
Okay.
2 weeks.
All right.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
a struggle. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
yeah.
one, I'm so unbelievably happy that you called in. We have for just fuck this. Fuck
Sorry. Yeah.
everything that you're going through. This man should have no custody whatsoever. He should be paying you full child support. We got to get a serious protective order in here. So as a starting point, I'm still processing the fact that you lost the child and the miscarriage because he was shoving you. Honey, you need a lawyer. Like you're talking to, have you talked to a divorce attorney or a family law attorney?
Yeah. I'm at a place currently where they won't, because of their office policy, they won't have a hearing to change the custody orders because he's upset my oldest child so much that I had to admit him to a mental hospital last week. And of course, he shows up there yesterday to pick him up without even telling me.
Okay, so you're in a
mess.
war right now.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And this is active and this is live. So what I want to start with is we're going to get you. I can't promise other people like slavery is illegal, but we have a lot of friends that are attorneys. Like Matt is guest hosting today. We normally have Bill. We have a lot of friends that are attorneys, and the whole point of the show is that we want to help people. So we're going to get you in contact with a local family law attorney that is a bulldog, that understands how to protect mothers and protect children. Your ex is a danger to those children. You don't even need to lose one child to be a danger, and he's lost two. So your rights have been violated. You have not known enough to stand up for yourself, but I think you know today, and that's why we're talking. And so we're going to get you with a family rights attorney who can get that process started for getting him away from your kids and giving you space. And then we're going to tear up that $300 child support. That is a joke. What does he do for work?
He's a programmer. He makes almost $100,000 a year.
Every time you talk, I get angry.
Yeah,
it's not your fault.
I know.
Every time I talk,
it was a clerical issue.
my
The judge wrote it down.
my blood pressure right now is
The detective accused me multiple times of saying this stuff because we're in the middle of a divorce, even though I hadn't filed yet, and repetitively told me, firstly, for whatever reason, asked me how much money he makes, and then told me he doesn't want to lose his job by making false accusations. He also has refused to send any of this to the DA. He's just been holding on to it and doing nothing with it.
Yeah.
And I can't report it to anyone else.
We're gonna throw some weight around. It also helps that you're pretty close to us, so locally we can get involved. If you were, in Canada, it would be harder to help.
Yeah.
So let me, Leach, I'm gonna talk to you directly and just tell you that we are so proud of you and that you're so brave. And this isn't gonna end today. This is gonna continue, but we're gonna make sure that you have some support. And the good news is, if there's one thing like the story is terrible, it's awful, okay, but if there is good news, it's that it does not have to be this bad tomorrow. Like, there's clearly fixable things. Like Matt, I want to give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate it.
I mean, again, like Josh and our guest, I've been absolutely horrified by what I've heard here. This is not the way cases are supposed to be handled. You've really got two cases here. There's the divorce case, and then, as Josh has outlined, the case against the police, and they're both connected. Because temporary orders and temporary restraining orders are only as good as the law enforcement agency that's going to enforce them. And right now, it seems that you're coming up against active resistance. It's not even indifference. This guy's actually refusing to do his job and saying, I could lose my job, when he has qualified immunity, and it's very, very difficult to sue and remove police. That's just nonsense. So yes, you absolutely have to fight fire with fire. You need another lawyer, you need a family lawyer, and potentially also a lawyer to deal with the police issue, because you're going to have to, first of all, you've got to call 911 on anything, that involves your personal safety or the safety of the children. It is laudable that you were thinking of other people, but
It's
right now
911 only now.
911 only on
Yeah.
everything. Okay. We've got to get you with someone who can file a police complaint so that we can get another police officer to handle this case. Because, as I said, if you get temporary orders and there is a violation, you've got to be able to dial 911 and be confident that you're going to have a squad car out there, within a reasonable period of time.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the two cases are overlapping. And I know it sounds daunting. Hey, you need two lawyers, but there are plenty of lawyers out here who will
Love this case. There's lawyers that
find
would
ways
dive.
to help you.
There are lawyers that, look, let me tell you this, Leia. You don't have a mean bone in your body, okay? You don't have a mean bone in your body. You've been a victim since childhood, but you don't have a victim's mentality, and you're taking care of your kids, and you're doing the right thing, and I'm proud of you for that. But what you need right now is you need a mean motherfucker. And that's not your job. And that's what the right lawyer is for. It's somebody who just wakes up and they get a little bit of a head rush, a little bit of a dopamine hit from beating up bullies. And we're going to get you that person, and we're going to put the fear of God in your ex, because this guy's a monster. And I can't say it enough. I'm so sorry that you're going through this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It just feels like it will never end.
It'll end.
It does feels that way now. You've been incredibly brave sharing your story with us, and today, just think of today as a line in the sand, because we're gonna get you the help you need. You got to protect your kiddos, and you got to protect yourself.
And I want to say one more thing to you. I feel like you have shame, because when you called us, you gave us a little bit of the story. And then when we kept asking questions, it got darker and darker and darker and darker and darker and darker and darker. And I think that you have shame, but I want to tell you that you need to let that go. It's not your fault. And if anything, I think you should be proud of how much you've overcome. And I'm just telling you right now that the choices you're making right now, you're not only are you going to have a better life, but you're going to make sure that you have a better life for your kids. And I can tell you, your kids already have a better childhood than you did, just by you being around. And you're a great mom, and we want to support that. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
I do try. Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you were heard today? Do you have any other questions for us?
No, yes, I do. I do feel like I was heard. I very much appreciate your time.
Yeah. We're gonna follow up with you. So it's Saturday right now, but we're gonna follow up with you by Monday with some attorneys that are gonna talk to you, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Whew, it's very dark. Very dark. Yeah.
Wow. Any thoughts on that? I've talked a lot on this one.
I think that when, you're with someone, especially as a woman from a very young age for a long time, you start to depend on that person mentally, financially, and, they do something that they know inside their head is no good, but it's like you have to defend them to keep them around for yourself, and make excuses for that person. And I think that a lot of women, unfortunately, have to deal with that. Like, verbal abuse is totally a thing, and obviously grabbing someone, especially a woman. But we make excuses for that, and that's really, really sad. So, but not everyone is like that.
Absolutely. And I think, from hearing about her background, obviously, as you said, this is shame, feelings of worthlessness. That's when you're making excuses, saying, focusing on, hey, the bright side of the relationship or whatever. And this behaviour is just abhorrent. And to have gone through it for so long, again, it's childhood programming, but and I think she's doing sort of the right thing, obviously, with having therapy and all the rest of it. But so many people, I think, have got to realise, and this is what the show is doing, spreading the message that there are people out there who will help you.
Yeah.
And I think so much in the public mind, lawyers are incredibly expensive and wear fancy suits and drive fancy cars. And
I was gonna ask, like, if you don't mind, like,
Please.
my question is I don't know much about lawyers. I've never had to get one, but for example, in her situation, I'm not sure what her financial situation is, but if it's not good, how can she go about getting a lawyer? I mean,
there are charities. There are pro bono charities in Dallas and all major cities in the US, in smaller towns, in smaller cities, where lawyers will, and we volunteer our time in Dallas. It's called the Dallas Volunteer Attorney Program. You basically sign up. They send emails out every day. Hey, we've got this kind of case. Can somebody volunteer their time to help? And some of it is, routine, like we've got a divorce, a non-contentious divorce. Can somebody help this spouse? Or can somebody do a will? And I've done, full-blown trials and, full-blown litigation through that. So there are lawyers that will volunteer their time to help. There are other lawyers who will obviously work on reduced fees. Talking about, bulldogs, there are lots of lawyers out there who became lawyers because they've gone through the same experience. And they want to help people like Leia. So it's really not a case of, hey, send me $5,000 or I'm not even going to talk to you. There are lots and lots of lawyers out there who will do it either for free or on various other arrangements.
Especially for a mother like this in this situation, especially for a mother like this where the husband has a 6-figure income, there's a lot of lawyers that'll say, hey, I'll get my fees out of the payment plan that we get set up, especially because there's such a gap, like with her only getting $300 right now. It's like that for four kids. I am tongue-tied even thinking about it.
Did she mention she has a job? How will she be able to provide to the kids, right? Like $300.
She's got to be working. We should have asked her that.
How can you, like, we don't know how old those kids are, right? Like, $300 for 4 kids, and then, like,
and she's in America. Maybe she sent the kids.
Like, I always wonder, like, how people raise kids. Like, it's very expensive, like in California, like 4 kids, and then
4 kids is expensive in Texas. Four
Everywhere
kids
it's really expensive.
4 kids is expensive in Alabama. There's not a
like kids, for $300. That's crazy. I wonder, like, how she would be able to provide to kids as well.
I think this was inside baseball. I think that the detective either goes to church or his friends or with the ex. I think that they railroaded her. The fact that she never had a lawyer in any of this, he stood over her while she filled out the paperwork. I think there's a ton of fraud here. I mean, he probably didn't kill the one kid who drowned. It was probably negligence. But he killed the unborn kid when he pushed her. Like, that's a this guy's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like this is the worst. We've had like 100 calls at this point. This is the worst call that we've had so far.
Oh yeah, it is very kind of heavy, dark one. Like you said, the story gets darker and darker, right? At the beginning, you're like, oh, it's like domestic violence, then involved children died.
I was defending the murderer. The way she described it at the beginning, I was like, hey, look, like it's still abuse that he held you, but like I was like, I can see both sides of this. Like that's where I started, and then we talk 20 minutes later, he killed 2 kids.
Yeah, and then the relationship between detective and the ex-husband, there's definitely some very complication.
And I can feel her. I can feel her, like, understanding. She's too understanding of him. She defends him with her tone, just the way, and that's hard. It's not just her. It's just how it is, especially when you're so tied to someone and you have so much with someone.
Yeah,
it's very hard.
And that's the trauma from from a childhood dynamic, from growing up in that environment.
Right. I think that's
it
why
took the therapist.
Yeah, I think
to say, hey, I think kids are in danger here.
The ex-husband definitely manipulated her emotion, like she was, molested by her father, right? And then I think, the ex-husband know, like, what kind of what kind of like, trauma she's having and manipulate her emotions. And then obviously have all the kids together. I think she, like you mentioned about it, you depend on a person, like, like 15 years going through all those like ups and downs. And then,
it goes beyond that, right? Okay.
It's so complicated.
This guy is only sending $300 to the person who's raising his kids. Like, he doesn't even care about his kids. He doesn't care about her. We all have a bad ex that we've blocked, but he doesn't care about his kids. Like, this guy's a piece of shit.
And
maybe turn the cameras off and then we just.
And also one thing mentioned about the oldest kid was sent to the mental hospital.
Yeah.
And then I think all those kind of trauma and drama between them also deeply affect the children as well. The children have to, I feel bad for the children, honestly. The children have to witness so much fights between them. Like children's, obviously has been mentally disturbed by all those behaviors, right? Like, it's just, poor kids, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's the problem as well in Texas. It's not over on the divorce. We're talking about, yes, there's, a court case that's going to end in a divorce, and then there'll be financial arrangements and all the rest of it. She's potentially going to have to co-parent, or however you want to describe it, with this guy for years. And talk about the trauma of having to see that person after what he's done. That's really, really dreadful. I think where a lot of the time the agencies just fail people in her situation just dreadfully, dreadfully badly.
Well, we care here, and we want to hear your stories. Jump in the comment section, reach out to us on harrowing.com if you want to call in. And this story is going to be one that keeps going for a while, and we're going to keep going. So thank you for watching. If you have a crazy legal story and you want to talk to some lawyers anonymously for free, call us.
Wait, we're not getting paid?
Nothing at all. I don't know how we're going to pay for it, to be honest.